A single backyard hen once fed a family for a decade, laying eggs every winter, raising her own brood and costing almost nothing. Now most chickens are bred to burn out after 2 years, and they are replaced by paid subscriptions of feed, medicine, and fragile birds. In 1970, fewer than 3,000 of America's legendary immortal chickens survived. So who, if anyone, benefited from making self-sufficiency all but extinct? The answer begins with a bird your grandmother never needed to buy twice. In the heart of the 19th century in New England, a new kind of chicken took root on small homesteads and rocky hillside farms. These birds weren't bred in laboratories or churned out by factory hatcheries. They were shaped by the hands of women and men who needed a flock that could outlast snow, hunger, and the leanest years. Somewhere in Rhode Island in the 1840s, a farm woman began refining a bird tough enough to survive the worst winters and resourceful enough to find its own food when the grain ran out. She wasn't alone. Across the mid-Atlantic and into the Appalachians, families traded stories and eggs, selecting for birds that could weather blizzards, raise their own chicks, and keep laying when others stopped. They called them Dominickers. The name drifted from porch to pasture, a folk label that stuck to the speckled, barred hens scratching under apple trees and along stone fences. The origin of the name is wrapped in legend. Some say it nods to the West Indies, others to the Dominican order's black and white habits. On American farms, it simply meant a bird that didn't die, didn't quit, and didn't need to be bought again. By the mid-1800s, the Dominique had become the first truly American chicken breed. These birds were woven into the daily lives of farm families from Maine to Kentucky. They appeared in early farm records and were shown at the first American poultry exhibitions in Boston in 1849. Grandmothers swore by their Dominickers, passing down eggs, stories, and starter flocks to daughters and granddaughters. The breed's barred feathers filled pillows and quilts, while its sturdy frame provided Sunday dinners and steady eggs through the coldest months. For nearly 2 centuries, the Dominique was the default flock for American self-sufficiency. Generations remembered the same pattern. 1 hen, 1 rooster, and a handful of chicks could keep a family fed for a decade or more. No manuals, no brands, no supply chains, just a living lineage as reliable as the sunrise. The Dominique was not just a chicken, it was a promise of survival, quietly kept in every barnyard and backyard it touched. By 1970, the Dominique was nearly gone. Fewer than 3,000 birds remained, an entire breed whittled down to a handful of flocks scattered through Appalachian hollers and Amish barnyards. Once these speckled hens had been everywhere. Now their absence could be measured in numbers, in silence, and in empty nests. The numbers tell a story that is hard to ignore. A heritage Dominique hen could give a family a decade of eggs, 2,000 or more in her lifetime, while raising dozens of chicks along the way. The cost was $5 or $10 for a starter group, and the rest came from the land, kitchen scraps, grass, bugs, and the grit beneath her feet. No brand names, no replacement bills. One investment, and the flock renewed itself. Modern hybrids turn that logic upside down. Today's production hen is engineered for speed, not longevity. In just 18 to 24 months, she lays around 280 eggs, then her body breaks down. Her bones grow brittle, her organs fail, and she is replaced. 7 cycles of buying new birds over 10 years, each time another check to the hatchery, another bag of feed, another round of supplements and medications. The math is relentless. The old way was a one-time purchase. The new way is a subscription you never escape. During World War II, chickens like the Dominique were more than numbers on a ledger. They were a lifeline. Government posters urged families to keep victory flocks alongside their gardens, promising that eggs would help win the war at home. A mother wrote that her hens laid 6 eggs a day through January while her husband fought overseas. Those eggs kept her children alive. Backyard flocks filled breakfast tables when ration cards ran out. Children gathered eggs in the snow, and mothers counted on hens that laid through the darkest months. The Dominique's endurance was not just about survival, it was about dignity, about feeding a family when every meal mattered. When the world was at war, these birds stood between hunger and hope, but as the decades turned, the birds that had saved families vanished from the catalogs. Their numbers fell, and with them a way of life slipped quietly away. What was lost cannot be measured only in birds or eggs or dollars. It was the loss of a promise that a family with a handful of hens could stand on its own. In the years after World War II, a handful of corporations began reshaping American agriculture from the ground up. Tyson, Purdue, and Holly Farms built their empires on a new model, vertical integration. They did not just sell chickens, they controlled every link in the chain, from breeding stock to hatcheries, feed mills, and processing plants. This was not a subtle shift. By the early 1950s, these companies had consolidated power in ways that made the old barnyard flock look like a relic. But the real transformation happened behind the scenes, in offices and research labs. Funding that once supported diverse, self-sustaining breeds was redirected. Land-grant universities and the USDA began pouring resources into developing hybrids that matured faster, laid more eggs in less time, and most important, could not reliably reproduce on their own. Extension agents, once trusted for practical farm advice, started encouraging families to switch to standardized industrial breeds. 4-H programs quietly dropped heritage breeds from recommended lists. Mail-order hatcheries slimmed their catalogs, offering fewer and fewer of the old lines. The business model was clear. Birds that could renew themselves, that thrived on scraps and sunlight, were no longer welcome. A chicken that could replace itself without corporate input, that could survive without branded feed or constant medication, was an economic threat. What cannot be controlled cannot be sold. Not once, not every 18 months, not forever. The disappearance of the Dominique and breeds like it was no accident. It was the result of a system built to turn independence into dependency, and to turn every backyard flock into a permanent customer. Modern chickens are built for speed, not survival. The Cornish cross, the industry's go-to meat bird, grows so fast it often cannot walk or breed on its own. Its entire existence is measured in weeks, not years, and every new generation must be ordered from a hatchery. High-output egg layers, bred for relentless production, have lost their broody instinct entirely. These hens will never sit on a nest or hatch their own chicks. The cycle is locked. No mothering, no natural renewal, only replacement by shipment. Nutrition has suffered too. Eggs from heritage breeds raised on pasture carry more omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D thanks to sunlight and a diet of grass and insects. Industrial eggs laid by birds confined indoors and fed a uniform corn and soy mix show lower levels of these nutrients and a paler, flatter yolk. The flavor difference is no accident. It is the result of what is missing from the land and the bird alike. The environmental cost runs deeper. Free-ranging flocks once fertilized fields and kept insect populations in check. Today, concentrated barns produce vast manure lagoons where waste can leak into groundwater and antibiotics flow out with the runoff. When power fails, as it did in Texas and North Carolina, hundreds of thousands of birds can die in a single day, unable to survive without climate control or constant inputs. Heritage breeds like the Dominique weathered storms, droughts, and snow long before electricity. When the grid fails and supply chains snap, the chickens that need nothing will be the only ones left. Today, 99% of America's eggs come from breeds that cannot survive without constant industry support. Every lost heritage flock is a lost tool of self-reliance. As food systems grow more fragile, the birds that need nothing may matter more than ever. What would real independence look like now?